Hey everybody, Peter Zion here, coming to you from Colorado, where we are going to talk about the new German government. There is a new German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and he is taking over for Angela Merkel, who has been in charge of Germany for something like 45,000 years. She's one of the longest tenured government leaders in Europe, really, ever. And she took over at a strange time for Germany when times were good. Now, historically, Germany has it's had some problems. Its territory is largely indefensible. It's located on the northern German plain, and Germany kind of oscillates between two kind of themes. Number one, it becomes strong and it provokes all of its neighbors to beat up on it until it's gone. Or number two, it's gone, it's shattered, it's divided. When Merkel took over in the early 2000s, there was a strange moment in the post-Cold War system where the Americans were still preventing everyone from carrying out their own security policies, and Germany's traditional rivals, the Brits, the Russians, the Germans, the Austrians, were either neutral or allied or weak to the point that they couldn't act. And so it was this wonderful moment where the Germans didn't have to be responsible for any security policies, and no one challenged them on security policies. So the Germans could focus all of their energy on politics and economics. It has been a golden age. And in that environment, Merkel saw her primary job to hold that historical moment. So she worked on facilitating the absorption of the former East Germany, which was her home. She focused on holding the Russian relationship frozen in abeyance so there was no real movement, knowing that if it ever became active again, the Germans would be screwed. She focused on making the euro a regional reality in order to bind Europe to Germany, and her traditional foes, her being Germany's traditional foes, would instead have a vested interest in Europe's success. She focused on economically integrating Germany with all of the Central European countries that had been formerly Soviet satellites, so that all of them became firmly entrenched into the German sphere of influence. And finally, she wanted to keep the US involved, but at arm's reach, so that US policy would not be dominant, so that German interests could determine what was good for Europe and what was good for Germany. And in all of that, she was wildly successful. And this very brief moment, historically speaking, in German history, which probably should have only lasted for 3 or 4 years, instead lasted for nearly 20. That is a huge accomplishment, and Germans will probably be thanking her for that for years to come. But the world still evolved. She was able to hold this historical moment for Europe, but beyond Europe and other things within Europe kept changing. And that meant she regularly delayed deep, meaningful decisions about deep structural issues that became bigger and bigger and bigger as time went on. So, for example, Europe's demographic picture is horrible. As bad as it is, Germany's is actually worse. The birth rate collapsed in Germany almost 60 years ago. And so Germans are facing a mass retirement this decade and have absolutely no replacement generation. Europe's economic model, because of this aging, means it's totally export dependent, which means that the European economic model, the German economic model, are completely dependent upon US strategic commitment, which is now waning. The Russians, because of reasons of infrastructure collapse and demographic collapse, are becoming increasingly desperate, making it increasingly likely that they're going to act to overturn the apple cart. Witness what's going on in Ukraine. And actions that the Europeans in general, the Germans in specific, and Merkel personally took in order to preserve the European Union these last 20 years have largely removed the euro from global circulation. It's really just used within Europe. And the Americans have moved on. Europe is just no longer a priority. Now, addressing these issues or preventing these issues from developing into crises in the first place, that's a multi-year effort. Merkel expended so much effort on simply holding the center and maintaining that moment in time that she kept her eyes firmly off of the future. And in the issues that she addressed, she wildly exceeded expectations, but left all these deep structural system-threatening issues to fester, and now they're all overwhelming, more or less at the same time. And Scholz is new, and he's inexperienced, and he leads an unwieldy governing coalition that must now face all of these issues at the same time. The new German government doesn't simply face a baptism by fire, it faces a baptism by napalm, because any of these major structural issues is capable of overturning everything that Merkel held together. And the 5 of them at the same time? That is a governing challenge that I would not wish on anyone, much less the new guy. Okay, that's it from me. I hope everybody is having a great holiday season, and I'll see you next time.